Hey guys, in this video we've got the Tekno SCT 410.3, and if you've been watching the channel, you watched us put this one together, and we bought it as a roller and it was kind of abused and we had to change a few things in it to get it up and running. So we put it back together, and in this video, this is part 2, this is the bash test and the review for this car. Now, we did put this through a lot of punishment and it held up quite nicely. At the end of the video, you're going to get our review and we're going to tell you what we learned about the car. Then you'll get our 4 questions. Is it fun? Is it durable? Is it worth the money? And where does it stack up in our collection? Let's get on with that running footage. Check this out. Oh, nice. Okay guys, so there's the running footage for the Tekno 410.3, and this is a really cool car, and we've put a lot of damage on the body. It's got some dents and whatever, and this is going to go away in favor of a new one, but for now it worked really good for the test footage because you can tell which one's which, and we are going to keep this body on it through the shootout video, which is upcoming. Now, this car has had a change in it since the build, and what we did was we took the 3-channel receiver out and we put in a 6-channel with ABC. So now it's got the ABC system on it, and we've connected it to a DX3. And if you guys watch the channel, you know I love this. As far as the RTR radios go, I think this one is cream of the crop. Range is awesome on it. It's got really fast control, and you can pretty much count on it to do whatever you want the car to do. So the radio set in it now is really good. It does have that 35 kg servo in there from VTEC, and we use that in a lot of the bigger cars. You know, even the Traxxas Sledge has one of those in it now, and it handles a lot better with that one than it did with the others. It's plenty fast, and it does the job at 35 kilograms of thrust, so that's impressive. Now, I've got a few things. I'm just going to read them off the list. This may look a little awkward, but I'm going to read down this so you know what's in the car. It's got a 3200 kV motor. It's got a 120 amp HexFly speed control capable of 2 or 4S. We only ran it at 3S and 2S during the testing because we're not really going to play with it at 4S because it gets a little off the chain at that one. It also has the 6-channel receiver, the DX3 in it. It's got a 15-tooth pinion, and it's a little slower than the other cars because it could be geared up, but it did run 4 or 5 minutes longer than the rest of the cars at that gearing, and that was really easy on the motor and the speed control, so it was a lot of fun to bash like that. Keep in mind, guys, that we set these up for bashing. Everything we have here is not a race setup. It's for bashing. Big bumps, rough terrain. Even on the track, it's still handled pretty good, but I'm pretty sure a track setup would just slaughter this car. And that's just the way we have it set up. As far as I can tell, this one handles every bit as good as any of the other short course cars that we have in here. So there's that. Keep in mind that our setups are for bashing. That's what we do, and that's what works for us. However you set yours up, if it works for you, you're not doing it wrong. Finally, let's talk about the tires. This has the Traxxas Ultimate tires and wheels on it. And initially, when we got the Ultimate, the gluing on the back tires wasn't good, and we lost the tires on both of the rear end of that car, and we had to re-glue stuff to get it in place. These ones, on the other hand, held up just fine. The traction works really good, they're really controllable, and they handle around in all kinds of situations perfectly. Now that you got the specs down, let's get into the review. Check this out. All right, so let's take a look at the body first, because this one really paid the price. Now, it didn't tear or fracture in any of those ways, but the back is completely punished from the shock towers, and so is the front. You can see the modeling up front here. Nothing is smooth anymore, so the shock towers do put a pretty heavy price on the body. Other than that, it held up pretty good, and I think it'll work out just fine for the shootout. So that's the case on the body. You know, it was a brand new body when we got started, and there's nothing brand new about it any longer. However, the car itself handled really good. Now, the differential in the center, when I first got it, that was burned out, and before we ever shot the video, I went ahead and replaced that with a stock one. So 15-tooth pinion on the stock spur gear, and everything went back in. None of the drive lines are bent. The arms are, look how tough these arms look. They're solid across here, and they held up perfectly. We like to have our suspension nice and loose because that allows to handle rough terrain better. It does lean a little bit in the corners when you get out into the oval track and things like that, but when you get off into nature, that kind of suspension setup holds up really well. We still have the stock fluid in the differentials, so, and we checked, they are still full. They're 3/4 full. They weren't completely maxed out, but they're pretty loose anyway. So everything is kind of freewheeling, but at the end of the day, with that type of setup in here, it handled really good in rough terrain. The servo worked out really good. All of the steering worked out perfectly. The speed control had absolutely no issues. The motor never even got really warm. You could always lay your hand right on it because of the gearing that's in there. So 15-tooth against a stock spur gear, everything worked out really well, and the fan is connected right here, so it did keep things nice and cool. We did bend the rear shock tower, and the front one held up perfectly. We simply torqued that back and got it back in shape. It's not a huge deal. It's pretty easy to adjust, so flatten it back out. There wasn't any permanent damage to it. It just flexed a little when we came in. We shoveled it in on the tail a couple of times, and of course that's going to bend things here. It was pretty simple to get back in shape, and when we're done here, I'll flatten it back out and get it back into stock before we run it in the shootout. So the tires are in excellent condition. It controls well, but I did come off the jump once, and I was way out of pocket. I came off the jump. I was turned like this. I landed it on the corner, and it did break the C carrier up front. Small plastic piece, and it was really not much to fix it. However, that was entirely my fault. I knew better, and I did it anyway. So I don't fault the car. Any of them would have broke with that kind of impact. So that's the basic run out on that. All of the chassis braces are in great shape. The chassis is still straight. This is one really tough car, so I am impressed, and I like the way this thing handles. Okay, so we've got one more item I want to touch on before we get into our questions, and we'll do that real quick right here. But right off the bat, when we installed the servo, we got some heat from the subscribers because they say we put it in backwards. Now, the neat thing about this is it doesn't matter which way you put it in. It functions perfectly from either side. We did have to raise it because of the height of the servo, but even with it in the other direction, it works fine. And with it in this direction, I had enough cable to reach the transmitter or the receiver without any adapters or lengtheners for the cable. So this allowed everything to fit properly, and the steering works just fine. So just know that you can put it in either way and it'll function. That being said, it's time to get on to our 4 questions. And if you watch the channel, you know what they are. Is it fun? Is it durable? Is it worth the money? And where does it stack up? So let's get on with question number 1. Is this thing fun? Well, absolutely. The way we have that set up for the conditions that we run in, it's an absolute blast to play with. The thing's really tough. When we first got it out, we had the stock set up in all of the shocks, and it was like running a board. This was all so stiff, it didn't want to work properly. And what it was, we opened it up and checked, and it had light fluid in there, but the piston heads had such small holes in it that it would travel so hard, and in certain situations that would be an advantage. But the way we run things here, it needs to move really freely like that. It needs to do that when you're out in the rough terrain, and it just wasn't getting it. It was really hard to control. So that being said, we pulled all the shocks apart and we bored those out a little, making the holes a little bit bigger. Now with the light fluid, and we're talking 15 CST or 15 weight, it allows for nice, easy travel, and that's what we're looking for. The upside to that is with the larger holes in the piston heads, we can stiffen the fluid and get right back to where it was, but allows you to make it nice and soft when you need it that way. So the shocks that came with it had that really track-based feel to it, and in rough conditions, that just makes the whole car kind of walk over stuff as opposed to feeling its way through it the way you need it to maintain control. Adjusting that, once we got that changed, the fun level went through the roof. That being said, with all that taken into consideration, we're going to give this one 8 out of 10 for fun, because we did have to do some modification to what came out of the box. And out of the box is a loose term, because this is one of those deals, it's more like a roller. You get the chassis and the wheels and all that stuff. You have to buy all your electronics. You have to put a body on it. And I'm sure there are kits out that you can get more than that with it. But what we got was basically a roller. And we know it was used, but we looked and it's still running just about. If you look on eBay, everybody's selling just that roller kit for about $500. And you may be able to find it cheaper. You may be able to find it more expensively, but you still had to do all that to it to make it work. So for that reason, 8 out of 10 for fun. And question number 2, durability. Well, how durable is this car? Well, if you watch the channel, you know we don't play nice. When it's time to test something, we test it for real. However, we do not ever intentionally break stuff unless it's to teach something. We did take the Losi DBXLE and power it into a pole to break all the parts on the front to demonstrate how to repair it. But it's usually rough times like that we do that kind of thing. When we're out testing a car, we're going to run it in the best conditions we can. We're going to take it out into all kinds of situations, and we're going to pin it. And we're going to see what it can hold up to. But we've been doing this here for a long time, and we've got pretty good reflexes. I've been doing it personally for a long time, so the reflexes are there. When you get into a situation where you could get out of pocket, I kind of naturally get back into the line of things. I don't run into stuff very often, smashing into trees. Once in a while, I'll get out of pocket. For the most part, just the reflexes helps keep things in line. So depending on driver's style and skill level, you may have different results than we do. And I'm not trying to say we're great at this or anything, but it's just something that after a long period of time, I've got well over 35 years myself, you kind of get used to when to back out, when to get on the throttle, and that type of thing. And so that helps us keep these in line a little better. If you're running in rough conditions, and it's one of those situations to where if you're not all that skilled and you panic and pin it at the wrong time, you're going to break things because nothing will pull up to slam it into a pole or a fire hydrant. Now, as far as that goes, we're going to give this one 9 out of 10 for durability because this is a really strong truck. The arms are solid, they're really good. Usually I like flex, but they're short enough to where it doesn't seem to be a problem, especially with the wheels in so close. When you get the wheels in tight like this, there's less leverage against the hinge pins down in here, and they just seem to hold up really well. Most of the short course trucks hold up really well in that category, unless, like I said, you're piling them into stuff. So we're gonna give it 9 out of 10 for durability. And question number 3, is this thing worth the money? Well, if you watched us build it, then you understand what we had to put into this car. Now, the car itself was just over $300 to get a hold of the roller. Then we had to put all the electrics in it, that servo, it was speed control, its motor, it's all of that, plus wheels, tires, and the body. That's a pretty significant add-on to the base cost of the car. Now, not only that, but you have to put it all together as well. And if you're not into wrenching, I wouldn't recommend it, although it can be worth it in the end. If you are into the wrenching and you like to build these types of things, that might be the way to go. Still, with the Traxxas / Ultimate out there, it is a relatively expensive car, but you get a lot with all the updates and stuff that are in it. So it's a really good car, and running at 9 and 10 with the TT Pro in our list, that's pretty impressive because they're the only 210 scale cars in the top 10 at the moment. This one here, you know, we're talking just about the same amount once you get everything purchased. And if you buy it at retail costs, you could be into it more. So that's something you need to weigh out. For us here, we're going to give it 7 out of 10 for value because there is a lot to it. And if you guys know of one of these that's an RTR with the radio and all that stuff ready to go, please leave it down in the comments for the others so they know where to find it. The way we look at it, this is pretty much a roller setup and you kind of need to build it, but I really do think that particular part is worth it. So we're going to give it, for value, 7 of 10. And that leads us straight into question number 4. Where does it stack up in our collection? Well, we got kind of the short course bug lately, and we've got quite a few of these now, and we are just getting ready for the short course shootout. And when we get that done, we'll see what the real hierarchy is for these cars, at least within the channel. And of course, keep in mind, guys, this is all our opinion. Yours may vary, and just because they may not be the same as ours, it doesn't mean yours are wrong. What works for you works for you. This is what works for us. This one, guys, is not going to make the top 10. In fact, it's going to be all the way down at 17 because we've got so many cars at the channel here, it's just hard to find a good spot for them. This one here, it required a bit more modification out of what we got to make it work the way we wanted it to. Therefore, it's going to sit down in the 17th spot. So if you haven't already, don't forget to subscribe, like, and share. It's awesome when you do, and it lets us know if you like the content that we're putting out for the channel. You know, this is about what we like to do here. I know it's all about RC cars, and that's what we do, but the channel's pretty much based on what the group here is into at the time, and right now, we kind of have the short course bug, and that's what we're doing. That doesn't mean that's all we're going to do, guys. We've got big cars, we've got small cars, and if it turns us on, you'll see it on the channel. If you guys have one of these and you've done some cool things to it, or you have found one that's an RTR or whatever, if it involves the Tekno SCT, please leave it in the comments down below and help others along the way. Hey guys, I'm AJ with AJ Jam Studios saying, keep bashing, guys.